I woke up excited and nervous all at the same time. I had been preparing for this day for months, actually all my life, but I didn't know when it would actually come about. Now, the day was here. I climbed out of bed and tossed my nightgown in the laundry basket in the corner and padded off to the shower. I took more time than usual making sure that my legs were clean shaved, as well as any hair anywhere else on my body. I was fortunate in that I turned out not to be too hairy. I think even if I tried to grow a mustache or beard, it would likely be a sparse collection of hairs on my chin or upper lip. I didn't mind though. I never wanted to have that. I spent too much time admiring my smooth features in the mirror while wearing one of my mom's or sister's dresses as a teenager. I tried to imagine what it would be like to be able to go to school and walk the halls in a short pleated skirt or a nice dress. I've lived on my own now for 8 years. I've let my hair grow out, which some people at my job have commented on, but it isn't a problem. I work in an office and have no contact with external customers. Plus, I work in IT and we seem to be allowed some eccentricities. When I first got my own place, I thought of how wonderful life would be and that I would have a great wardrobe of dresses and lingerie, and though I would spend my days at the office wearing the same old boring things, my nights and weekends would find me in fabulous clothes. Reality was that clothes are expensive for one thing, especially women's clothes. Then there was the fear of discovery. What if a friend or family member came to visit and found my alternate wardrobe? What if I had an accident and got found in a dress by a neighbor? I would be mortified. I would suddenly be consumed by these fears and would grab the few things I had collected and go bury them in the dumpster outside when I thought nobody would see me. I ran that cycle for nearly 5 years. Then one day when I was about to take a dress I particularly liked to the trash, I decided to wait. The fear passed. I put it back into the box I had in my closet that I thought nobody would ever look at. Then I bought another and added it to it. Soon, I started hating dragging the box down off the shelf and putting it back each time, so I started hanging the dresses in my closet, toward the back, but they were still there on the hangers. Also, my lingerie found a place in one of my drawers. Over the next couple years I did all of my shopping online. I now knew the sizes I needed and shopping online was so easy. I still couldn't buy tons of things, but a new dress every other month or so, new lingerie about as often, and new shoes once in a while. My collection wasn't the extravaganza I had fantasized about, but it was getting to be a good size. Family and friends visited and I worried if someone should wander to the bathroom, which was adjacent to my bedroom. What if they wandered in and looked in my closet and saw my dresses? What would they say? What would I say? I finally decided I'd tell them the truth, and if they didn't like it, they didn't have to come back. Of course, I wasn't going to volunteer the information, they would have to discover it on their own. And I wasn't in any hurry for anyone to do that. I stepped out of the shower and dried myself off. I wrapped a towel around myself and went to the kitchen to eat some breakfast. I fried a couple eggs and toasted some bread, then sat down to eat and wonder what I was going to do with my day until it was time to go out. I had managed to get an invitation to an art gallery showing. It was going to be a semi-formal affair. They would have food and wine, and the patrons would all be dressed in nice clothes, suits and dresses. I didn't expect to run into anyone there that I knew, so I decided to take advantage of the opportunity and plan my first night out dressed as I had always fantasized. I rinsed off my dishes and left them in the sink. Then I grabbed some items and went to the living room. I turned on some music and proceeded to clean up and paint my toenails a pale pink. I couldn't believe how hard it was to find the right dress for the occasion. I wanted something very nice, of course. I wanted a full skirt on the dress and I wanted it short. There were plenty of choices, but almost all were strapless or had way too low a cleavage, and I didn't have a cleavage. After a long search, I finally found a black lace over a green dress. It wasn't perfect, but it fit what I needed. I had to order a new strapless bra that I could wear and not have straps showing under the lace. I also needed some breast forms. I carefully painted my fingernails to match my toes and sat there blowing on them and waving them about, trying to get them to dry quicker. I finally found some shoes to go with the dress that I really adored, a black sandal with straps that crossed over my feet and wrapped around my ankle atop a 3-inch heel. I looked down at my freshly painted toes, imagining them inside those shoes, and a shiver of excitement ran up my spine. It wasn't even noon yet. This day was going to drag by. I carefully laid my hands atop the towel and closed my eyes, trying to lose myself in the music and make the time pass. I sat there for as long as I could. I checked and my nails had all dried, so I went to my room and dug out my breasts. I took great care adhering them to my chest. The new way felt strange and satisfying at the same time. I almost never wore them, just enjoying the clothes on my body without any extra enhancements, but tonight I wanted to look the part and not have anyone suspect the truth. I put on my bra to support them and put on a string bikini panty. I didn't really care for thongs or G-strings. I liked full coverage front and back, but as little as possible on my hips. I also wear them tight to keep the least feminine part of me in place, another reason I like full skirts, no bulge, no panty lines. I wanted to get dressed completely, but I didn't want to get anything on my dress or get it wrinkled. I sighed and looked at the clock again. Just past noon. At least I could eat some lunch. I went to the kitchen and made myself a small salad. One thing about liking the clothes I did was I did everything I could to keep my body in shape. Not in the shape many men like, but more thin. I finished off my lunch and cleaned up the kitchen. What next? I couldn't wait any longer. I sat down in front of the mirror and began meticulously putting on my makeup. I took a lot of time, longer than I had ever taken before, making sure the base was even, eyeliner was perfect, eyeshadow obvious but subtle, lipstick perfect. I closed my eyes for a moment and tried to clear my mind. Then I opened them and tried to give myself an objective opinion of the face that stared back at me from the mirror. I felt she was exceptionally pretty, but really needed to do something with her hair. Ugh. I went to the bathroom and began combing and spraying and adjusting. Slowly the hair took shape, gentle curls fell over my shoulders. My blonde hair would look great against the black lace that would soon cover my shoulders. That shiver returned again. I looked at myself again. I looked like a girl I would want to date, though she likely wouldn't be interested in me. I've talked to lots of women around the office, many of them are friends, good friends. We go to lunch, we have drinks after work, but none are interested in going out on a date with me. Don't want to mix business with pleasure, already in a relationship, want to focus on my career. I think of you more like my brother than someone I would go out with. I've heard every excuse I can think of. I also don't know how I would introduce my other side to any of these ladies. I've heard some of them talk about stuff like this and they wouldn't be very tolerant. This is a big reason I haven't dated since college. I went back to the bedroom and grabbed my shoes. I sat down on the bed and slipped them on, first the left and then the right. I leaned down and buckled them, then leaning back I lifted them up to look at my feet with their painted nails in them. More shivers. The showing at the gallery didn't start until 7 o'clock tonight. It would take about 30 minutes to get there by cab, so I could have it get here just after 6:30. I decided to go ahead and place the call to have the cab arrive at 6:30. I hung up the phone and went and sat at my computer. One thing I hadn't thought about having before was a robe to wear. Walking around my place all day in bra and panties, I started thinking about how nice it would be to have something I could throw on for times like this. Most days I go straight from the shower to a dress. Today I wished I had one. I searched a bit and found a satin robe for $30. I ordered it and signed off. I couldn't wait any longer. I went to my closet and pulled the dress out. After making sure there weren't any fuzzies clinging to the lace, I pulled it from the hanger, tossed the hanger on the bed, and pulled the dress over my head. I tugged and straightened and smoothed. I pulled my hair out and fastened the enclosure behind my neck. I needed to check my hair and makeup again. So hard. Do the makeup and hair first so I don't get anything on the dress, then check the hair and makeup to make sure I didn't mess it up getting into the dress. I pulled open the closet door again and looked into the full-length mirror I had mounted there. I almost squealed in delight. This was going to be an amazing night. I had managed to not mess anything up. Could I really do it? Suddenly the idea of going out my door looking like this terrified me. What if something happens to me? Mom always said wear clean underwear in case you get hit by a bus and get taken to the hospital. Well, my underwear is clean, but I don't think this is what she had in mind. What was I thinking? I can't do this. I walked around the place from room to room, hair and skirt streaming out behind me, shaking my hands, mumbling to myself until suddenly I stopped and felt my dress slap the backs of my thighs and sway for a moment. I took a deep breath and slowly walked back to the bedroom. I planted myself in front of the mirror and took a good look. I fixed my hair again, only a few renegade strands had come loose. You've been looking forward to this night for a long time, I told the image in the mirror. You look terrific, nobody will know. You know what not to do to stay out of trouble. And look both ways before crossing the street and you won't get hit by a bus. Now, get your purse and make sure you have everything. The cab will be here soon. I watched the woman in the mirror nod at me and reached by her into the closet where a beaded clutch purse was on a shelf just inside the door. I put some money, a credit card, my driver license, though I wasn't going to show it to anyone tonight, the invitation, and a few cosmetics into it and snapped it shut. I took another look in the mirror and heard the honk from the taxi outside. The time had come. I felt not a shiver but a light sweat break out on my body. But I took a breath and then remembered to grab my keys on my way out the door. I checked the back seat of the cab before I sat inside. Last thing I wanted was some big stain on the back of my dress. Fortunately, this one seemed pretty clean, so I carefully got in and handed the driver a card with the address of the gallery. I saw the driver check me in the mirror a few times during the ride. I don't know whether he found me attractive or was suspicious of my true nature. I tried just staring out the window and ignoring him. At last we arrived. I dug out the cash for the trip and passed it through along with a decent tip. Thank you very much, miss, he called in a heavily accented voice. If you need a ride back home later, call and ask for Raj and I'll be happy to get you home very safe. I smiled and nodded to him, then turned and left the car. It was just after 7 o'clock and people were beginning to drift into the gallery. I was certain most of the people would want to be fashionably late, which was fine with me. I didn't really want to be around that big a crowd where I had to be too close to someone else. The cab had let me out on the opposite side of the street from the gallery, so I carefully checked the traffic to be sure I wouldn't get run over by that bus and crossed the street to the gallery. A couple had reached the door before me, so I pulled the invitation out of my purse while I waited for them to be admitted. The man was wearing a very nice suit and tie, she was in a very low-cut long dress. Actually, the outside dress was sheer and long, The dress under it was very short, but she had both the legs and the breasts to be showing that much skin. I thought of a dress like that but couldn't find one with a neckline that I liked. I felt sorry for the man. How boring to have such a limited choice on what to wear. 90% of the men would be dressed the same tonight, with color being the major difference. Better hope 2 women don't show up wearing the same thing, especially if one of them is me. I handed my invite to the doorman and he allowed me to enter. There wasn't a name on it, so there was no telling who might show up. I had gotten mine from a friend at work that had gotten it from someone else who didn't want to use it. I tucked my clutch up under my arm and picked up a glass of wine and a small plate of appetizers. I wandered about looking at the paintings and sculptures. Tonight's showing was actually a collection of local artists. As I wandered, the nervousness started to subside. I started paying more attention to myself, how I felt as I wandered about the room in my heels and dress. I looked in any reflective surface I could see that would show me among the other people in the room. Eventually, even that sensation passed and I started paying more attention to the art. Coming here was more than an excuse to dress up. I really did like doing this sort of thing. I saw several things I liked, though I couldn't afford them. I nibbled on things that were offered throughout the room and picked up more wine. Then I had to make a decision: finish the food or finish the wine? I needed to go upstairs and I needed a free hand to hold the railing. I was having enough trouble balancing the plate and glass in the same hand so I could eat, and there was no way I could navigate the stairs in the heels I was wearing without the rail. I haven't had that much practice. I decided the food would go. The wine was giving me a nice warm feeling. I ate the last bite and found a trash can to drop the plate into. I was feeling very proud of myself when I managed to get to the top of the stairs without tumbling backwards down them when I caught someone coming up the stairs, and I think he was looking up my dress. I quickly moved away from the top of the stairs. I downed the rest of the wine in my glass and quickly looked for another. I was feeling very flustered. Even if he did manage to look up my dress, there wasn't anything he could have seen except my panties, which I was suddenly aware had started slipping a bit toward the crack of my butt. I resisted the urge to try and place them back onto the cheek where they belonged. I walked over to a painting I found interesting, modern art, a swirl of colors, but the pattern suggested something real. I didn't care for pictures of just squares or splashes of paint without meaning to me. Others might like it, but not I. I stood there for a few minutes looking at it, trying to decide what it was that I was seeing. "You like this one?" came a voice from just to my left. "I find it interesting," I commented in my best female voice. I looked over and relaxed a bit. It wasn't the man who followed me up the stairs. "Yes," he answered. "I am thinking I might like to buy it. But if you are considering it, I will let you have the first option." Oh my God! He was hitting on me. "Oh, I'm afraid I won't be purchasing anything tonight. It is all yours." I smiled and turned away to find something else to look at. He must have been looking for an easy pickup because he chose not to follow. I was a little disappointed that he gave up so easily and relieved at the same time. I glanced back and a new woman was standing at that same painting. She was in a tight white dress split down to the navel. He wasn't looking at the art any longer. I went back to looking at the other displays. I finished my tour of the upstairs and went back to navigate the stairs again. I took a quick peek to see if any guys were in a position to try and peek. The stairway was in the center of the room and had very open railings, lots of opportunity. This time my hands were free, so I tried to casually hold my skirt with one hand and the railing with the other. I headed back down the stairs. First thing I noticed is it is a lot harder going downstairs in heels than it is going up. I was grateful I wasn't trying to do any more than that this time. Once again, I made it without any problems. Another glass of wine, another plate of food. I wandered about the gallery again. This time I tried spying on the other women in the place. I studied the way they were dressed, the way they stood or moved. I looked at how they interacted with each other and with men they were with or just casually talking to. It was an art show within the art show. I turned and accidentally brushed the arm of a man that was passing by. He didn't even notice, but it knocked the napkin from my fingers. I carefully squatted down to pick it up, and as I got my fingers on it I felt a pop. I froze where I was for a second. I slowly stood back up and felt my panty falling off. That caused fear and reaction I didn't want. I looked around quickly, found a trash can just a couple steps away and dumped my unfinished food and wine into it. I moved my clutch from under my arm to a position in front of me where I held it with both hands as camouflage. I could feel my underwear was still on my left leg, it was hanging and tickling my thigh. I slowly walked across the room trying my best not to draw attention to myself and went into the ladies' restroom. I looked about and I was alone. Still I picked a stall and went in locking the door behind me. I laid my clutch on the top of the toilet paper dispenser and lifted my dress up. Sure enough, there was my underwear hanging down my leg. I pulled it loose and pushed it to the floor, then carefully sat on the toilet and picked it up to examine the damage. They had broken right where the string connected to the front panel. Any idea of a temporary fix was out the window. I sat there for several minutes trying to think of something I could do. My evening was definitely at an end, but I still had to get a cab and get home. What was I going to do? Then I remembered when I got out of the cab I saw a 24-hour convenience store just down the block. They wouldn't have underwear, but they would likely have pantyhose, and at least that would keep me from flopping around under my dress, or worse. At least I would be in good shape to wait on the cab. I heard the door open as another lady came in and took the next stall. I stood up, flushed the toilet, grabbed my clutch and went to the mirror. After checking my makeup and washing my hands, I threw the broken panty along with the paper towels into the trash, left the restroom and headed straight to the door. "Excuse me," I asked the doorman. "If I leave for a few moments, will I be able to come back in?" "Of course," he smiled at me. "I'll remember you." I nodded my thanks and turned up the sidewalk toward the lights that glowed down the block. It was a beautiful evening and I strolled toward the store at a leisurely pace. Obviously, I couldn't take my mind off my problem, but despite that I was enjoying the walk. I went into the store and found a display of pantyhose. A quick search paid off and I found a pair of nude control top hose. I went to the counter and paid the board clerk and left. I might have thought about using the bathroom to put them on there, but I doubt I would want to touch anything including the floor. At least the gallery bathroom was clean. I stopped by a trash can outside the store and liberated the hosiery from the packaging so the hose would fit in my clutch. Feeling a little better, I wandered back to the gallery. "I'm back," I announced to the doorman. "You certainly are," he pulled the door open. "Enjoy the rest of your stay." "Thank you." I passed through the door and headed straight to the bathroom. I walked in and there were two women standing in front of the mirror and they looked at me in the reflection as soon as I came in. I smiled and went to the first stall. "Well, I don't know who she is," one of the women spoke, picking up on a conversation I must have interrupted, "but I think that dress is a bit distasteful for an event like this. If it weren't so tight, those store-bought boobs of hers would fall out. And being that tight, you can see she isn't wearing any underwear at all. If my husband stares any harder, he'll wear a hole in her dress. Don't worry, dear, the other woman chuckled. They will look all night, but they really appreciate what we give them at home. And if they don't, we make them pay. Oh, isn't that the truth? The two women left. I opened my clutch and pulled out the hose. Laying the clutch aside, I went about the business of getting them on, not an easy job in a narrow stall. Just as I was almost done, I felt it. Like someone ran a finger up the back of my leg. How can that be? These were brand new? I must have snagged them on something. God! I called out without thinking. Are you all right? I heard a voice. She must have come in when the other women left. Sorry, I thought I was alone, I stammered, trying to compose myself again. Anything I can help you with? I doubt it, I answered. Wardrobe problem. Long story short, I had an underwear problem, got pantyhose to make do, and now I've managed to put a run in them. I heard the stall door next to me open and close. What sort of problem? Panties broke and are in the trash, I whimpered. Walked down the street and got the hose and ruined them. Guess I'll just have to deal with this ugly run until the cab gets here. I was so enjoying tonight. You threw them in the trash here? Yes, just a little bit ago. I heard a rustling. I hope you aren't digging through that trash for my underwear, I called out. No big deal, honey, she chuckled back. They weren't too far out of sight. Oh, these can be fixed. You can't be serious, I was a little hopeful. They broke right at the edge. I guess you didn't have a safety pin on you? Didn't your mother teach you a safety pin to us is like duct tape to me? There isn't anything we can't fix with one. Suddenly my panties appeared under the wall of the stall. I took them from the hand that held them and inspected the repair job. Sure enough, the safety pin had been pushed through the panel and the broken string tied to the other end. I peeled off the ruined pantyhose and dropped them on the floor. Slipped the panties back on and adjusted myself. Once my skirt and shoes were back where they belonged, I gathered up the hose and left the stall. I thought it was you, she smiled and gave me a once-over. I've seen you walking around tonight. Lots of folks are here just to be seen being here. You actually look like you are here for the art. I am. I threw the hose into the trash, then turned to the mirror to inspect my face. A touch of lipstick was needed and I attended to that. What about you? I checked her over while looking in the mirror. Only an inch or so shorter than myself, she had long red hair, dressed in a gorgeous red dress, strapless, form-hugging, and short. I don't know how I did not see her earlier. She was someone who would stand out in a crowd. Oh, I love the art, she stepped away from the mirror. Sometimes the art is more than what is on the walls. The people can be a display all their own. I turned around to look at her. I was thinking that very same thing earlier. I could tell I would like you right off, she flashed an amazing smile. I'm Kate, she extended her hand. I stepped toward her and tried to shake her hand as femininely as possible. Hi Kate, I'm Joan. Well, Joan, now that your disaster is taken care of, let's go back out and enjoy this show together. Oh, I don't know, I hedged. I appreciate your help, but I think this may have put me off for the rest of the evening. I think I ought to just call a cab and go home. Nonsense, Kate stepped close and put her arm around my waist. She led me toward the door. Another glass of wine and you'll forget all about this little problem. Come on, I want to have someone to talk about all the stuff here. And it is getting to the hour where everyone feels they need to be here. We left the restroom and sure enough the crowd had doubled during the time I was in the bathroom. We grabbed a couple glasses of wine and started wandering about the room. It was getting tougher to move about without bumping or rubbing against someone. At one point I was certain someone had taken a good feel of my ass. "Oh, I'm sure someone gave you a little feel," Kate told me. "Sometimes they think they are being so clever. I just ignore it as long as they keep it to my butt." One guy actually tried to feel up my breast. In a room like this? I was incredulous. "What did you do?" I grabbed his hand and announced that if he tried something like that again I'd do my best to break his fingers. She laughed. His wife was none too pleased. "I can't believe the gall of some men," I answered. "It isn't always the men, dear. Some of the women can be a handful too." "Really?" It was then I noticed a woman in a corner eyeing a man with his back to her. She turned and walked past him, trailing her hand lightly across his butt. He glanced and smiled as she walked away. "I guess so." Kate and I wandered around for another couple hours discussing the art and the people. I managed the stairs another couple times. "Kate, I've really had a wonderful time tonight. Thank you for coming to my rescue. But I think I better call that cab and start making my way home." "Joan, it has been very much my pleasure. I think we ought to do this again sometime. I had a whole lot more fun talking to you about everything. Listen, I have a car. Why don't I give you a lift home? It is going to be a whole lot cleaner than a cab." "That is very nice of you, but I live a ways out. About 30 minutes north." "I don't want to put you out. Actually, you aren't putting me out at all. I'm going in the same direction. We might actually be neighbors." "I doubt that. I would remember seeing someone as pretty as you around. But, if you really are heading that way, thanks again. I would love to catch a ride." "Great. If you are ready, why don't we head on out now?" "You're driving." "I'm ready when you are." We left and walked down the block a little ways when she stopped by a Lexus parked at the curb. "This is me." The car lit up as she approached and she opened the driver door. I heard a click as she unlocked the rest. "Hop in." She was definitely not living in my neighborhood. Nobody in there would spend that much money on a car like this. It was nice, clear, and fairly new. Wish I could afford one. She touched a screen for the navigation. "Why don't you go ahead and punch in your address, then we won't have to worry about missing a turn." I followed the directions and got the address entered. The automated voice told us to proceed down the street and take a left. Kate checked for traffic and pulled away from the curb. I couldn't help looking at her legs for a moment as she drove. Her dress had ridden up some and displayed a lot of shapely thigh. I quickly tried to focus on the passing scenery. Kate told me about another art showing that was coming up in a couple weeks and wanted me to commit to going to it with her. I hedged, trying to say I needed to check my calendar and couldn't be sure. She wouldn't give up. "Where exactly do you live?" I tried to change the subject. "About 1.5 miles from you, I'd say," she answered. "Close, like I thought." Close geographically, but judging from this car, and the fact that you get all these invites to these openings, I'd say we are worlds apart. "Don't worry about that," Kate admonished me. "Money is great to have to be able to buy some nice things. But you shouldn't let it define who you are as a person. Be true to yourself, and it won't matter to other people if you have money or not, if they are good people. I like to think of myself as a good person, Kate went on. You dress very nicely. You were at the gallery, so I thought maybe you had money. When we started talking, you told me how you got the invite, and you mentioned the cab. I knew then that you weren't the person of means that I thought you might be. But I liked you, you were still a person that I found interesting, and I want us to hang out more. We were getting close to my place. Thank you, I told Kate. I really like you too. Let me think a bit more about the next gallery event. I can give you a call if you give me your number. Even better, how about we have brunch tomorrow? She proposed. I have your address. I'll come by about 10:30 and we can discuss it over a meal. Oh, gee, I stammered. I don't think I can do that. We were still a couple blocks away and I couldn't wait to get there. Why not? Kate asked. Are you afraid if I see you in the daylight I'll know you are really a man? My mouth ran dry and my skin turned cold. What? It's okay, she smiled. I wasn't really sure. There were certain things that we talked about that as a woman you should have figured out by now, like getting felt up in a crowd. After that I thought about your wardrobe malfunction. Maybe you were very conservative and felt you had to have panties on, though combined with the other stuff I decided maybe you needed to have panties, and why. I thought I did so well, I groaned almost in tears. You did amazing, Kate added, reaching over and putting her hand on my leg just below the skirt. I didn't know for sure until just now, and before that it was just a gut feeling. Nobody in that room had any idea. I am certain of that. Some of those women just look for an excuse to talk about someone else. If there had been any idea, I would have heard. We pulled up in front of my place. So, can we do brunch? She shifted into park and the door locks popped. You still want to be friends? I whispered. Absolutely. Kate beamed. Do you mind telling me your real name? It's John, I mumbled. Okay, Joan, Kate went on. I will call you by the name of the person I see, okay? I nodded. Who will I have brunch with tomorrow? John, this is the first time I left the house as Joan, I explained. I don't have everything I need for a casual daytime outing as Joan. I have a lot to learn still. Typically, I just hang around the house. Really? Your first time? I really am impressed. She leaned across and wrapped her arms around me in a hug. I tentatively reached up and hugged her back. I think we are going to be great friends. Tomorrow, 10:30 sharp, I expect to see John out here waiting for me. I nodded, a tear had formed in the corner of one eye. I'm looking forward to tomorrow, and I hope Joan and I will be going out together again. I opened the door and got out of the car. I walked slowly to my door, aware that Kate hadn't driven off yet. As I started to go in, I turned and waved to her. I could just see her wave back, and then she drove off down the street. I walked into my living room and plopped down on the couch, no longer worried about wrinkling the dress I had on. Many thoughts and feelings were bouncing around my head. I had such a wonderful evening being Joan, until my panties broke. Who ever heard of that happening? I would be shopping for panties with a better waistband in the morning. But Kate came to my rescue and I found a friend. Maybe a girlfriend, or maybe a girlfriend. The future looked a lot different. I lifted my dress and looked at the safety pin holding my panties together and shook my head. What a night! I had better get to cleaning up. It was going to take a while getting off all the makeup and nail polish. I thought I would have all day tomorrow to get the polish off, but now I have a date. I headed for the bathroom.